Greetings to chess fans around the world. My name is John Hendrick, and today I'll be guiding you through an instructive game I played with one of my students at a tournament called the Lonestar Open in Houston that took place between March 18th through March 20th in 2022. It's a wonderful tournament. I finally had success in this tournament, unlike my last few tournaments. Thanks to working hard at chess. So guys, keep working hard at your chess. And this photo was taken over here, was taken by the Chess Refinery, and they were also directing at the tournament. So thank you for taking some awesome photos. Thank you to Kwani for that, and thank you to John, her husband, for helping direct the tournament. Also, thanks to the tournament director, the chief tournament director, Francisco Guadalupe, for helping to organize a great tournament. We have wonderful organizers, tournament directors, and a great chess community in the Houston area. So I'm really grateful for that. My opponent this game is Daniel Yang, playing the white pieces, and I played him twice already in other tournaments. This is the second time I've played him. So I played him before and won with the Binko Gambit. And this time I played the Slav Defense, and it was much harder to win because my opponent got a better position out of the opening, and I was quite worried. Daniel will overtake me one day, I'm sure, just like some of my other students have already done. I try hard to keep up with my students, but it's a joy to watch them better me. It's a joy as a teacher. So let's take a look at what happened in the game. So I was playing the black pieces, and Queen's Gambit is on the board. If you take the pawn, black can play, white plays e3 to get the pawn back, and black should not hold on to the pawn. There's traps like this where you can't even take the pawn back because of the rook. And furthermore, black should play knight f6 and just give the white the pawn back. But as you'll see, one of my big problems this game was my bias toward not giving my opponent the big center. Nevertheless, it's the Queen's Gambit accepted, and letting white take the pawn back and developing your pieces and castling kingside. That's a viable and perfectly good opening. But nevertheless, I didn't play that. I played the Slav Defense. And this is the Slav. Another way to decline it is e6. But if you play e6, it blocks in your bishop right here. If they don't take the pawn. If they take the pawn, of course, it's fine for your bishops. But it's another way to play, and black will try to castle really quickly. c6. Now my idea is both bishops can come out, but there's one problem. If white exchanges, and it's called the exchange variation, a lot of people don't even like this opening because it feels so dry and drawish. But psychologically, I'm okay with the draw as black, especially if I play a lower rated player. I could just grind them down to the endgame, and I'm happy with the draw against a higher rated player. So that's kind of how I justify this opening. Well, the problem with this opening is when I play someone the same level as me, where I don't want to draw, and I might have to play something. I might have to learn something besides the Slav, in that case, because if I play someone who's the same level as me and they play for this drawish position, and they need to draw and I need to win, maybe it could be a little bit daunting. But that's something I'll think about. So we have the Slav. My opponent plays knight f3 though, and we have one of the main lines. I usually play into the Chepaninko later in the game. After something like knight c3, I'll play the Chepaninko variation. But my opponent plays the unusual queen c2, and I am out of book already. I knew actually that I was supposed to take the pawn here, but I was afraid of some things. I'll show you what I was afraid of. I was afraid of if e4, b5. I thought this looked good for white, but the truth is, I realized after the game, white has wasted a tempo with the queen move, and black is totally fine. Up a pawn, and everything's fine. Excuse the allergies. And the sniffles. There's oak pollen in this area, but you might hear birds and stuff in the background. We've done some great work on the garden, so I'm really happy about that. And back to the chess game. Another thing was, if queen takes, I was worried about something like both players are developing their pieces, and I was worried about basically the fact that white has control of the center with the pawn, But look at black's development. Even the white bishop's not developed. So definitely something I shouldn't have feared. I should not be afraid of this. So instead I played g6. I played g6 here, which is a viable theoretical alternative. Basically, I'm getting ready to play bishop f5, and which is something funny. Another takeaway from this game is that I never played bishop f5 like I should have, because I was always worried about queen b3 going after my pawn. The fact that I was worried about this is something that could have cost me the game. That and my bias toward not giving away the center, as I'll show you a few times. Bishop g7, bishop g2, castles, castles, and I played knight bd7. Kind of interesting, but kind of dubious. Bishop f5 once again, best move. It's funny, I was afraid of trading queens here. And because if pawn takes, no good. My pawns are weak. I need the bishop to go from f8 somehow and help my pawns push. It's really not that good on g7. So my pawns are really weak on here. I knew that was bad, but I thought this was also bad. And this is good for black. I thought this is bad, not because my pawns, now my pawns are actually stronger, but I thought this was bad because white has control of the center. So an example line would be like this. I have an open A file, my knight's coming in. Now I can reroute the knight, for example. And black is totally fine. It's half open A file. And no reason to fear the center, actually. But instead, I played knight bd7. And after knight bd7, rook d1, I thought that Daniel should have brought his knight or bishop out. And I played a really good move, threatening bishop f5 again. And Daniel played the correct move, which was pawn takes pawn, c takes d5. And if b3, it stops his queen from going to b3, and bishop f5 is strong. And if c5, I was going to do this, and notice that white can't push the pawn, because I'll take it. And if he takes the pawn, black has successfully broken up the structure, and can play like rook e8, e5, b6, good ideas like that. So Daniel correctly took, and so far, oh, again, bishop f5 would have been a good idea. We could have traded queens with a good position. Pretty solid and maybe slightly better for black even already, with better development. You can see white's pieces haven't developed. So that was something I could have done, but I played pawn takes, knight c3, and again the chance for bishop f5. The computer, Leela0, showed me this line where I can give away 2 pawns, and for example, and just do a deadly knight fork, or I can play for this. And here I thought, okay, I don't know, I wasn't sure, and this is the kind of situation I will give a pawn away very happily for an attack against the king. I'll give a pawn away for a really great development, but to give a pawn away for stronger pieces and more active pieces that can really dominate, that's something that grandmasters excel at, and I don't excel at yet. So I need more examples and experience. But it would be lovely if I could figure out how to give away pawns for stronger pieces. And that's something I need to keep practicing. Maybe just try to do it more in my games. Just be brave, you know. Something that Magnus Carlsen, the world champion, has done a lot is give away pawns for activity. He's been doing that a lot lately. I've heard people talking about him doing that. But I played knight e8, which is very slow. These arrows mean basically I want to bring the knight here. I want to control this center, maybe defend my pawn. I want to play bishop f5, but knight e8 is really slow, and white hits me with bishop f4. Knight e5 is also really good. Bishop f4, and then knight e6, and knight e5 is a great move. You can see 2 attackers, only 1 defender. So I got scared and defended my pawn this way. Again, bishop f5. I was scared of playing bishop f5 again. This time, I thought my bishop's getting trapped. For example, here, here, and then my bishop is trapped. But I have a saving move here. Either in this position, I could play g5 and bishop g6, or even here, I could play g5 and then bishop g6, or bishop e4 and bishop g6, and I'm totally fine. So once again, bishop f5 was a chance. I played e6, and now white could play h4 with the idea of breaking open this h file. Maybe bishop f3, king g2, and rook h1. And then also another idea would be queen d2, bishop h6, trade bishops, play queen, h6 check, and then just checkmate me. It would be hard to stop the attack, especially since my bishop is pretty much dead over here. I can't get out. There's a pawn in the way. So e6 killed my position. But my opponent, luckily for me, blunders. It's very clever, actually. You can pause the video and figure out why I should not take this pawn right here. Why is this off limits? And if you found bishop takes d6, that I can't take the pawn because the bishop takes d6, you were correct. Because this knight fork isn't really nice. As indicated by the green arrows, my queen and bishop are forked, and I can't save my bishop thanks to the knight that's circled in yellow. So I found knight f5 though, because now the pawn really can't be defended. And Daniel correctly saw that if I played e3, you could pause the video and figure out how I trapped this bishop. And yes, the answer is g5 and then f6, and the bishop is trapped. So he plays, if knight b5, I could trade pawns on d4. I have an extra pawn. Should be no problem. Even after my queen's attacked, I could run away. And finally in the game, it was after knight f5, knight e5, but now I can win a pawn again. So try to find out how I won the pawn. Pause the video, and the answer is I thought about playing knight takes pawn, and then rook takes, and then bishop takes, but the bishop's there, so I dislodged the bishop first. Daniel goes back, I take the pawn, and I win a pawn. We trade knights in the center, and I win the pawn with a strong center pawn. I was afraid that he would play this. I was so relieved that he didn't play this move, but it turns out, based on computer analysis, this would have been fine, and he was right to move the bishop back to d1. Move the rook back, excuse me, to d1. If h6 to defend my pawn from the rook and bishop, this, and I was looking at first at moves like this, where I'm in trouble actually. The best case I have a draw. He just goes check, check, check over and over again. But it looks like I have lines like bishop d4 check, e3, which blocks this bishop, check, that was a check to the king, I take the knight, and if queen takes, I can trap the rook. If pawn takes, it's not really trapped in this position because the pawn can go here. But yeah, maybe I can still trap it with this move because his bishop's blocked. So if he takes, I'll take back with the queen. Daniel correctly moved his bishop back because he saw all the danger. I keep on saying bishop. He moved the rook back to d1, and I played queen f6. Slightly dubious. I should have played here and finished my development. Rook to the open file. The reason it's slightly dubious is because there's a line that really only a computer or a top grandmaster can find, which is a4, a5, e5, and it looks good for black at first, but white has king h1 and the counterplay of f4, and in this position the computer says white has equalized again, even though white's down a pawn. So, but that's extremely hard to find, so I shouldn't be hard on myself. I thought queen f6 is another good move. And in this position, bishop d2, going for queen c1, I see a blue arrow. I've never seen that in ChessBase. I don't know if they added that recently, or maybe they imported the blue arrow from Lichess. I'll have to figure that one out. But anyway, bishop d7, queen here, and I saw this variation. I saw h4, and I knew I would be giving my rook away for the bishop, which is called giving away the exchange, when you give away a rook for the bishop, and after takes. I knew that even though I gave away a little bit of material, I still have more material, and because of all my pawns, and also my king's like 8 out of 10 safety, and this king, the white king's like 2 out of 10 or 3 out of 10 in safety. I pinned the knight to the queen. I play here and I offer the queen trade. Computer says don't do this, but it's a really good move from a human perspective, and I probably could just win the game easily. The computer says just don't do that, but when you're winning, why not decrease the complexity? And that's why I played this queen trade. My opponent doesn't play it. He plays plays queen d1, and knight c4 comes with unstoppable threats. Knight e3 check, knight d2 check, and it's pretty much game over. e4, knight check, forking the king and queen. Takes, queen trade, of course. I have equal, we have two minor pieces, bishop and knight versus bishop and bishop, and I have 3 extra pawns, so why not trade into the winning endgame? Chase the knight away with d4, bishop e5 check, give my pawn away, rook c2 check, king g1, bishop c6, knight f2, bishop f4, knight d3, bishop e3 check, and pause the video and try to find the most efficient win. And yes, you're right if you found rook takes g2, king takes, bishop check, going for the double attack on the king and knight. And now we have this position with 2 bishops against rook, which is 6 against 5 points, with 3 extra points with the pawns, and it's game over. And eventually my opponent resigns because he sees the pawn's going to turn into a queen. I really enjoyed reviewing this game with you. Please don't forget to like the video, make some comments if you have any questions or just want to make a comment. And if you haven't subscribed, please hit that subscribe and that bell icon so you can see all my updates and all my new videos. Have a wonderful rest of your day, everyone, and just have a great rest of your day.